What's up, Thumpers? Welcome to another review from Hyper RPG. Super excited to be here to talk about this movie.
Oh, man.
Wreck-It Ralph 2,
Woo!
Ralph Breaks the Internet. So we're going to be talking about it in a non-spoiler capacity in the beginning. We'll go a little bit into spoilers, but I think this movie is going to be just a great experience overall for you guys to just go and see it. We were lucky enough we got to see it early at the El Capitan Theater. Our son Hector was with us. It was a good old time, lots of laughs. But a little bit of context, I guess. We should give a little context. By the way, this is Emily. Emily Rose
Hi,
here,
everybody.
talking about Wreck-It Ralph with me. I honestly, truthfully, have only seen this movie, I think, once or twice.
The original one.
The original one. Once in the theater. And I think Hector and I were debating. I couldn't remember if he had a screening of it as in one of the screenings that he does, or if I had just watched it on my own. But my memory of the first one was a little hazy, and you try to catch me up on it. We were talking to Lucas a little about it, and he was saying that the first movie did kind of a poor job with the marketing. And I would say that Ralph Breaks the Internet also didn't have the most enticing or intriguing or inspiring promotional campaign. Like, the trailers were fun, but I think something that Lucas pointed out that was pretty valid was it was a lot of just like, oh, look at this. It's just a lot of like referencing modern stuff like Instagram and YouTube and Snapchat and Facebook, and not really giving you too much context on what the story was.
And I remember when we were on our way to the theater, I remember telling you, like, just from the trailers, I definitely know the inciting incident. I think I know the problem.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, what the plot is and how that wraps up. However, I was delightfully surprised by that.
Yeah. I went into this movie kind of the same way, thinking, like, I don't really know too much about it, but I know from what I remember from the first movie, I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. I don't really remember the marketing that much. So I had high hopes going into this, and I think, we all did. Even our sweet boy, our sweet child,
Our
Hector
sweet
Navarro.
son, Hector Navarro.
Sweet son, Hector Navarro. So I guess to just sort of give you my first impressions of this movie, I absolutely loved it. It was so fun. It was funny. It was so, it had so much heart.
Gosh, the heart in this film is amazing.
It had some great messages, especially because I think the thing that this movie does so well is because it kind of moves in real time. This does take place 6 years after the first one, which is super, super key. Because it incorporates the internet, the greater internet. I don't really think this is a spoiler because they get into the internet, but the introduction of the internet in the movie was absolutely hilarious. I loved it. I think the key thing is that it was able to take that 6 years of time and really work it into the movie organically. Like, you see how the greater effect of the internet has on Ralph and everybody else who's in the arcade world, and how just like expansive and vast it is, and just how much it's grown and how that could potentially affect things for these characters in the future. So I think it did that very, very well.
I completely agree. I think, sorry, I was scratching my nose as soon as you finished.
And go.
No, yeah, to me, something that's always blows my mind is when you have writers and creators and artists who have to imagine these intangible things like eBay, like Amazon, like Twitter, and put it into pop-up ads, and put it into like email as well, and put it into a physical artistic form. I thought the film did such a great job of playing with those things. And we were talking a little before this, in that I can only imagine being a writer and a designer on this film. And basically, because it takes a long time for any film to be made, especially animation. Animation takes a while. I can only imagine what it was like to be a writer on this film and be like, okay, well, I hope the internet doesn't change in the next 2 years, or else, man, we're gonna have to re-storyboard a lot of stuff. Yeah,
that's the surprising thing to me, because it does reference a lot of stuff that today is still very much popular.
Yes.
And on the rise. But this movie has been, I think Hector was mentioning that this movie has been worked on since the first movie came out.
Yeah.
So figuring out how do you keep up with technology, and how do you incorporate things that are fresh in you? Like, how last minute do you put stuff in here?
Gosh, I don't know.
That to me is the biggest challenge. Even the design, honestly, even just the logo designs. Because it's not 2012 logo designs, it's the new Instagram, the new Twitter, the new eBay.
Exactly.
Like, the fact that, they at some point had to go in and maybe update those things, or keep and the fact that you don't, I think the smart thing is that they didn't allow for those sort of smaller changes that I know they affect those companies in the macro, but in the micro, they didn't make it such an important part of the story that they would have to go back and do a lot of revisions.
Yeah, it was just like
eBay
one
is
visual
eBay,
thing. Yeah.
Instagram is Instagram, Twitter is Twitter. And I think by doing that, by sort of generally incorporating these things and not really focusing on like the really in-depth like detail, like the minutia of what these things are, and just sort of honoring the spirit of what it is, I think is like how you prevent yourself from like writing yourself into a hole where you're like, oh, well, we wanted to incorporate this Instagram feature in the movie to make it part of the story. Now we can't because it's either gone or it's been updated. So I think it's very, I think you very quickly can sort of like, pigeonhole yourself and not be able to get yourself out of that rut. But thankfully they didn't. They were able to use all those elements really, really well. In particular, eBay, because the eBay sort of has like the biggest role out of all like the major online shopping sites.
I love the eBay.
Great.
The imagining of eBay is incredible.
It's so well done. I think that that's the other big thing that I think was done so incredibly well. Like I was mentioning pop-up ads, the way that they treat pop-up ads and
ad blockers,
like they're all characters in the movie. It's not just like a thing. It's not just like a sign. It's a physical, like there's a person who physically represents that thing.
Who's like a street seller trying to get your attention on the street. It's so brilliant. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to give away too much, but because they're great. They're great visual, delightful.
And I think that the thing that they did so well also is they find a way to incorporate the user into the digital world. There's a digital representation of like a real person. So like if I'm on a computer, inside of the internet is a small digital representation of me, a character who walks and talks, but definitely has this like mechanical feel to it, not a fluid feel like all the other actual like internet characters. So I think it was really cool that they played around with different styles of looks and feels to really get the audience to understand that like this is an internet character. This is a real world character in the internet.
Yes.
I think that was important too, because then I think everybody would just assume, why is there just a bunch of people in the internet? And it's like, well, no, these are physical representations of every human being browsing the internet at the same time.
It's so smart. Yeah. And just the way someone goes from like their browser to a website is really creatively done and animated. So
yeah, and even going from the search engine to eBay. It's like not a spoiler like you see in the trailers, but like it's like a little vehicle that pops up and like you get into it and it takes you to eBay.
Takes you to the page. I love it.
It's so incredibly well done, and I think that's the other part that is so impressive to me is very easily you could have not done that. You could have not been so artistic with it. You could have made it maybe feel a little bit more mechanical. But I think it wouldn't be as entertaining and fun as engaging to not only just kids but adults too, because it could have been very bland and boring.
Yeah. Speaking of artistic ways of doing things, as it's shown in the trailers, there is this kind of online GTA Mad Max game that Vanellope goes into called
Gauntlet
Slasher. Slasher Race or something.
Slasher Race.
Slasher Race. Oh, we're not gonna pull it up real fast.
That's why I have a phone. Keep going.
But in this, so it's basically an online GTA game, and they show actual players in it, and it's them just jumping, and they have their little screen names above their head. It basically plays to online gaming in these kind of multiple MMORPG or MMOs. Slaughterhouse Race in these MMOs. And it's so funny just because the video game physical movements are so, as a gamer, I was delighted not only, of course, by the original Wreck-It Ralph honing and kind of praising retro gaming, but in this one because it does bring in modern online gaming elements in the movie, and it tickled me.
Yeah, and I think that's another big thing is like online gaming has become such a big thing in the last 6 years, and things like Twitch and all that sort of stuff. It's really changed how we game, how we look at gaming, and to see a little bit, and it's not a huge part of it, but they sprinkle in just enough to make it feel like, oh, cool, this is like this is like 6 years removed from the first one. It's very much embracing like what's relevant now, especially with some of the themes that we're going to talk about, and some of the things that they touch on that I think we deal with every single day as online creators.
Yes.
And it's very well done. It's very emotional. There are elements of it I wish they would have held on a little bit longer. And I think it's probably because it is sort of a later edition maybe, that they probably didn't want to spend too much time on it. But I think when it hits, the message hits really, really well. I think the other thing too is because that's the thing that I love when we're in that slaughterhouse race, and you do see the players playing the game, I love the fact that we get to cut out into the real world
Yep.
and see that. Like I think that's fun, and I believe the first one did it, but not as much as the second one.
It was much more like, here's people in the arcade playing games.
It felt a little more passive.
It was a little more passive because it wasn't as... It isn't like in online gaming, you create your own character and then you're in the game versus playing a retro arcade game where you're playing as Wreck-It Ralph, or you're playing as Vanellope, you're playing as Sonic. So I think that's why there was that different feel with it too. I must say, props to Disney for showing two online players, one being like, I think probably like an 11 or 12-year-old boy, the other one being like a 16 or 17-year-old girl playing. They're both playing together in like different places, and I was like, yes, thank you.
Totally. No, yeah, it was great. I don't know how much else we can really say without going into spoilers. I think the other thing is the look of it, the design, the music, obviously like all of the intricate backgrounds and all that sort of stuff. It's all incredibly well done. The story, I think, is a really good story.
Beautiful.
And I think it does a really good job of making it relatable to an audience, because there are things that it talks about when it comes to friendship and insecurity.
To adults and kids.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, yeah, just the themes that it touches on as a 25-year-old sitting in that audience.
Yeah.
I was thinking of friendships I have and relationships that have been impacted by things that this movie touches on, and I was feeling like, oh yeah, and the fact that it deals with insecurities and the internet. Whoa, it's like we made this movie thinking about that.
I know.
But I think that's the thing that most surprised me about the film. I didn't come in with like low expectations. I just came in not knowing what to expect story-wise. I knew that like, okay, we're going to go on the internet. That's the device. What is the story we're telling here? Man, especially in that third arc, it just keeps going with heart, and just I was so surprised by this third arc and just the discoveries that were made by the characters and the resolution and whatnot. It's incredible. That's all I can say without spoiling it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that it focuses on very much from the very beginning is the relationship between the two characters. And some people may look at that relationship like it's weird. It's like an adult, homeless-looking man and a kid. But once you spend time with them, you realize how much of like a big brother, little sister relationship they have. They look out for each other, and to see sort of where these characters go on this adventure and how Vanellope's feelings start to change about going back to the arcade, and you know how it affects Ralph, and like what are Ralph's feelings about staying in the internet, you know, and the things that he deals with, or things that he comes across, and like it deals with being a viral sensation, all that sort of stuff. It touches on things that are so relevant to nowadays, and things that the industry is going through and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think it just did a really good job on touching on all these things and not spending too much time on them, but I think addressing them enough that when these things happen, they're the most impactful things of that moment.
And addressing these both players' issues from both sides, like both characters' perspectives. And so you feel sympathy for both characters, because you're like, oh, I see, like I've been in a place where I felt like Ralph, and but I've also been in a place where I've had to make these decisions like Vanellope, and it's really tough. So I thought that was really great too. It isn't like, oh, she's the bad guy because she's making these selfish choices, or he's the bad guy because he's feeling things. Like it explores all the different shades of these characters' emotions and experiences, and it's for a film about video game characters. I mean, just like the first one, it feels so human. These are these incredibly human stories that Disney is telling that I love this series. I think it's one of my favorite series.
I think also, like, I don't think this is a spoiler. Stop me if it is.
Well, I'm going to try.
But this movie doesn't really have a traditional villain.
No, you're right, it doesn't.
Yeah,
the first one did.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We talked about that because in the past couple of years, we've also seen a lot of Disney movies move away from these traditional villains. Like Moana really doesn't have... I know you haven't seen it.
I've seen Moana.
Oh, you've seen Moana?
Yeah,
okay,
Moana.
Good. That's a Disney film you have seen. But Moana doesn't really have a typical Disney villain. Like, sure, it's the volcano, but or it's the kind of destruction.
Yeah.
But it's actually the person who got something taken from them. They're not they're not a traditional villain like Gaston or Ursula, who's like, I'm evil just to be evil. I mean, the original Wreck-It Ralph did have that with King Candy, aka Turbo. Spoilers if you haven't seen the original Wreck-It Ralph. It's been 6 years.
I know.
But
I'm just giving
yeah, this one really, it's in some ways good in that the problems that were created came from someone's own insecurities and their own problems, like the real world. Like, we don't have Ursulas in our lives creating these, I'm going to be evil just to be evil. Adam, here's all this bad stuff in your life because I'm the villain. It's
that
sometimes
sounds pretty accurate.
Sometimes life just deals.
The villains in our life are obstacles.
And in essence, sometimes ourselves. We can be our own worst enemy in our emotions and our choices and in our insecurities.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see, just as a side note, how Disney films keep going with this because, I'm really interested because there's a part of me being a 90s kid. I love the original kind of Disney villain, Disney story, but I also, as an adult, am appreciating these kind of new stories that just say, life isn't full of these textbook villains and these storybook heroes. Everybody is good, has good moments and bad moments.
Totally, and I think that's such an important thing because I think if we continue to just make movies where it's hero versus villain, good guy versus bad guy, it becomes kind of stale, and it feels sort of like, okay, we're kind of just rinse and repeating the same thing over and over again. And I think you're totally right. When, to me, it's sometimes more interesting, especially when it's a sequel. If you're going to tell a story that's about someone battling their own inner insecurities, struggles, and it just makes it a little more relatable because, I mean, you're right there. We don't really have any like physical villains. Most of the time, we don't have physical villains in our own life. It is either ourselves. Sometimes it can be people, but it's not to the destructive level usually, not always. But it's usually not to the destructive level of what we traditionally see in movies.
Well, it's like magic. That's what I mean by traditional physical villains in our life, creating magic and stuff. I totally agree. There can be people in people's lives who are harmful, who are hurtful and poisonous. I totally agree with that. That's totally not what I meant. But
no, I get it.
I just meant like magic. Like the real world is not full of magical people who can put curses on you to give you legs, but also take away your voice. Oh, so you got to kiss this guy before sunset on the third day, or else you lose your leggies and your voice forever.
Let's talk. So we're gonna go into spoilers.
Do we want to talk about? I mean, it's shown in the trailer. Do we want to talk a little bit vaguely about the Disney stuff?
Totally.
Before we get into spoilers, because I feel like this is something.
In the trailer.
This was something. Yeah, there. Remember when I think it was the second Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet trailer dropped.
So.
They showed the Disney princesses, and myself included, lost my goodness mind.
Lost your cookies?
Lost my cookies over it. Being a big Disney princess fan.
One thing that I think is worth addressing too is going into this movie, the marketing did do a lot of like eBay, Amazon, Google, this, that,
Disney,
YouTube, Disney, princesses, Star Wars, Marvel, blah, 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 blah. For me, because I think I would have been really over that if the whole movie would have just been that. I think it was done so incredibly well, so tastefully, only when it needed to be in there, and only to sort of like tilt the cap and be like, oh, it's such and such character.
There is a hilarious moment that comes out of it. We will talk about in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, I did not see it coming. But it's so great. Yeah. Disney's in a really interesting place where we've seen it in Moana 2 where let me rephrase this really quick before I'm making the connections in my mind. So if you've seen the Wreck-It Ralph trailers with the Disney princesses, it's them all making fun of like, oh, were you poisoned? Were you captured and enslaved? And Vanellope's like, are you okay? Disney,
should I call the police?
Disney poking fun at itself, like, oh, well, did all your problems get solved when the big strong man showed up? Yes, she is a princess. Okay, it's Disney poking fun at Disney. We've also seen this in Moana when you have the Rock's character, I'm forgetting, Maui. Maui's talking to Moana on the boat, and he says, if you sing and you have a pet sidekick, you're a princess. So we're seeing this kind of meta Disney-ness. This film, at least, it made a little bit more sense because we're on the online Disney site.
Sure.
We're getting a lot of this meta Disney-ness in a bunch of these Disney movies. Moana, it was weird. This one I can accept
sure,
it
because of like the setting it takes place and all that sort of stuff. You're like, oh, this makes sense. Just make fun of it.
I mean, and even in Frozen too. I know you haven't seen Frozen, but there's a part where Kristoff basically turns to Anna and says, "You can't fall in love. You sing a song with someone. You can't fall in love with someone after meeting them for one day." And so I'm interested to see if Disney keeps this kind of meta comedy in their future films. This film, totally agree, it works. because of the setting and because of the premise. I don't like seeing my stories comment on themselves though in other films.
Yeah, and I think only a movie of this kind can really do it without it feeling like, okay, Disney, we get it. You're making fun of yourself. At the end of the day, you're still getting all of our dollars, and you're gonna still make these types of movies. Okay, you can stop it, sort of thing. But I thought it was done with care, and I didn't think it didn't ruin anything, and it didn't oversaturate or take spotlight from the real story.
It was delightful. I did enjoy it. There's also some really, really meta references in the Disney section that they don't show you in the trailers that I found absolutely delightful.
Yeah. So, well, before we get into spoilers, sort of wrap up like your non-spoilery thoughts on the movie before we jump into spoilers.
My non-spoilery thoughts. I think go see this movie, definitely. It's so charming, it's fun, it's funny, it's exciting. I was so surprised by where it went. As someone who sees a lot of movies and knows like story arcing and story tropes, I was personally genuinely surprised by the places that this movie went, which is a really good sign. And yeah, it has so much heart in it. Get ready to tear up definitely a few times throughout this film. Sure. But yeah, I just thought I'm so delighted by it. I'm just still so happy from it, and just it was a really, really well made film.
It was really fun. It's a really fun adventure. I thought pacing wise, it was incredibly well done. Never at any point in the movie was I like, okay, I'm bored. Can we move on? Every time you go to a new scene, you meet a new character, you're always intrigued and you always want to spend a little bit more time. The E-Boy, which we'll get into more in the spoilers, is like there's little things that they do that I'm like, this is fun, this is great, this is just having a good time. So, and everyone in the theater seemed to have a really good time watching it too. Yeah. So, with that out of the way,
all right,
let's talk about some spoilers.
Spoilers.
This movie technically is not out yet when you're seeing this review, so watch the movie, come back, go through the spoiler section, and we can talk about it. So.
Spoilers. What
is the first thing that you want to touch on? What was the thing? What was one element or moment in the movie that really won you over?
Oh, that's so tricky. Man, that's hard. It probably is. Oh, it's definitely this. It's the final fight. It's the third act final fight. When Ralph was getting the virus, and it says it looks for insecurities, immediately I was like, great, it's going to come after him. It's going to find him because he is the most insecure person we've seen throughout the entire movie, constantly operating on insecurity, thinking, if I do this, my old life, everything will go back to the way it was. And Ralph is someone who is really afraid of change, and is someone who, like in the industry we're in, change is so constant. I really resonated with that because sometimes change can be scary because you don't know what change what change brings. Yeah. But it was definitely during the climax of the movie because so when all these viruses multiply and they make a big old Ralph, the scene that it's parodying is King Kong, of course, Wreck-It Ralph being a kind of video game parody of Donkey Kong. Right. And so those, like, it just was so amazing as like a film history buff and a video game nerd. It was so fun being like, yep, okay, so you're mimicking King Kong. Donkey Kong was the video game kind of King Kong was the inspiration for Donkey Kong. Wreck-It Ralph has these very kind of Donkey Kong feel to him. It all came together, and that whole climax of Ralph and them not going through the security system, the antivirus system, and Ralph having to literally talk his insecurities out of existence by admitting to them and saying, no, you're wrong. This is not how a friend is. Gosh, that was just heartbreaking, but also so impactful. Yeah. The fact that it didn't get destroyed by an outside force, but Ralph had to destroy his insecurities by coming to terms with them and dealing with them himself. Yep. So good. Kids, I wish I had this when I was a kid. Yeah. And I mean, I'm very thankful to rewatch this lesson and remember this now as an adult because it's something we always deal with. Yeah.
I agree. I think that was a hugely impactful thing. And I think, like we do live in a time nowadays where there's so much happening in the world that sometimes we're afraid, we feel insecure, we have all these sort of negative emotions. And I think at least what this third act, this finale does of this movie is it shows you that as a singular person, you can overcome these things. You don't have to be afraid to overcome these things. You have to sort of embrace the fact that, like, this is what I'm going through. This is how it's making me feel. I need to overcome it. how can I do that? And really like talking it out to yourself of like, how can I overcome these things that I'm going through? And I think for a movie that like people are gonna look at as like a kids movie, that's such a universal thing. Like
Kids movie.
we're adults and we go through that every day, being not even just in this industry, just being in the world with everything that like we're sitting here recording this review and like a third of like Los Angeles is on fire and like people are losing their homes. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's been happening last week and it's like
it's been a really, really rough week.
yeah, it's been a really, really rough week and we've been dealing with so much and it's like we constantly every day have to be like, okay, we have to overcome it. We have to like continue living. We have to continue. And the fact that a movie like this coming out is going to say something about that for kids, for teenagers, for adults, I think is hugely impactful. And yeah, I do love the fact that it was Ralph who overcame it because I think a lot of times we feel like we can't and we need outside things to help us get through things. Not that that's a bad thing. I think
no, I think if you need help, go ahead and ask for it.
Like ask for it. If you are in a place where you feel like I can overcome it myself, then definitely go for it. Like don't be afraid to try to do that because I think like the movie just does a really great job of touching on that and the outcome of that, how it makes their friendship stronger even though that they part ways at the end of the movie.
See, that's the big thing for me is that like it's this, oh my gosh, as someone who has had so many dear friends and loved ones in my life, just the whole Vanellope his whole storyline too of this is my new passion.
Yeah.
This is like my new thing I want to go pursue.
Love, yeah.
And like this is the thing that makes me happy now. And Ralph to be like, oh, we don't get to hang out as much as if you pursue this. And even during that climax, for Ralph to see Vanellope and she's trying to talk down to his insecurity monster virus and says, fine, you know what? I'll stay with you. And just him seeing her basically succumbing her own life just to make his insecurities feel better, I think was a really powerful thing as well. Is that seeing that, no, people I care about, they shouldn't sacrifice, like, even if change comes, it can still your friendships still remain and whatnot. I think that was to me was really potent and impactful too.
Yeah, because again, it's like a lot of people who like leave home and they move away. You have a lot of friends maybe or family who try to convince you, please don't do this, don't do this. There's a lot of sadness involved, and it's like everything will be okay.
True friends support each other.
Exactly.
People who really love each other will support you no matter what. And you, if you really care about a person, you should also support them no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the moments for me that really resonated was Ralph dealing with comments.
Oh my gosh, the entire audience.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so curious. I'd love to hear from y'all when you go see it in theaters, if you go see it in theaters, how your theater reacts to this moment. But as soon as Ralph walked into that comments room where he sees all the comments on his videos, the entire audience was just like, no. Like, so many audibles like, please don't, because everybody knows.
Yeah, especially because the screening that we went to was a press, family friend screening. So a lot of the people that were in that room, in that auditorium, are people who make content like us on YouTube, reviews of these movies, and we talk about these movies and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, if you're watching the spoiler section, you know the context of like Ralph having to become sort of an internet celebrity in order to try to earn enough money so Vanellope can get the car to be able to pay out to get the steering wheel from eBay so, she can go back home, all that sort of stuff. And to sort of see like Ralph takes it upon himself to try to help get Vanellope home to be able to go back to what is it?
Sugar Rush.
Sugar Rush. And embracing that and becoming an internet celebrity, seeing all the likes, all the love that he's getting.
All the love that he's getting
that's being sucked up by the internet. And then
turned into money.
Which
is like the fact will say.
Tube?
With the bus tube. I will say the plot of this film being like, hey, become an internet star to make money. There was a part of me that was like, a little like, uh-oh.
Well, and I think that's what the movie does so well, that it sort of is like, embrace being an internet celebrity. And then he walks into the comments section, the comments room, and you see the dark side of all of it. And you see his heartbreak, and he's like, I thought people just loved me. And there's people It's a Disney movie, so of course the comments are like negative.
Ralph's
but it's
old.
Like,
he looks like a hobo.
Yeah,
but like
it's like glossy bad comments. But like, we're on the internet, we're on YouTube. We know the reality of how these comments really look. As someone who's been doing YouTube content for like 4 or 5 years now, You see the good side of it, which, like, thankfully we have a community of people who are mostly very, very positive and are very encouraging, and we love that and we thank you for that. But every once in a while, through the cracks, slips in a lot of negativity as well. And this was the one moment in the movie that I feel I wish would have dealt with just a little bit more and would have expanded upon just a little bit.
I can see that, yeah.
To really get outsiders to understand that even though you are behind a wall, meaning you're behind a computer screen and you are not physically present, the things that you say on the internet still affect people. There's a lot of people who work in this industry who purposely don't read the comments, and that is something that they mention in the movie is like, oh no, honey, you never read the comments.
Yeah, you never.
I'm sort of against that, mostly because I feel like we should engage with people who are negative. Not always, because I think it doesn't work 100% of the time. But if you maybe find 1 to 3 comments and just engage with the person and see and ask them and just try to have a conversation of like, why are you feeling this way? A lot of times, and when I've done it, I've had almost 100% success of really figuring out the root of this person's issue.
Yeah.
And just talking it out with them and like, I get it. Not everybody has the time to do that.
And I will say too, I think because this is generally aimed towards children, I think children and adults, now we have so many kids who are on the internet nowadays. We have so many kids who are creating content, who have YouTube channels, regardless if they are incredibly professional, Twitch streams. And I think the most important, I totally agree with your point. I think, as an adult and as someone who understands the web and understands that these are just comments and you trying to engage with them is an amazing approach. And I commend you for that. I also do think that the movie, though, was trying to especially communicate to kids that, hey, just because someone bullies you online, someone that you don't know posts a mean comment about you, that doesn't mean it's true. You don't look at that, because you are the only person that needs to believe in you. And you have a family and you have friends who love you and support your content and whatever you do. So to me, that's why that moment was really impactful, because it really connected to kids who are creating that stuff now.
Totally. Yeah, and I think it's very, very true. I think, you look at something like that and you look at it as someone who like creates content and someone who doesn't. And someone who's just kind of like a consumer and they see those sorts of things, it's like, man, internet can be really bad, internet can be really good, but I think it really depends on like how you embrace it. Do you look at that and go like, well, I know who I am, I know what I love, I know what I believe in. And we have this discussion on Hyper Heroes almost every single week of like, we love the things that we love. It doesn't mean that you have to love it. It just means that we're informing you like, these are things that we enjoy in our movies. These are things we don't enjoy in our movies. We're not telling you should feel this way.
Totally.
So I think that's also another important thing to take away from it is like, someone may feel this way about you. That definitely, like you're saying, does not mean that is what you are. At the end of the day, you know you the best. You know your strengths. You know your weaknesses. I'm sure there's a close group of people around you that know some of those things about you.
And hey, you know what? I'm going to tell you this right now. You are awesome and you are great. And today is a day that you can make amazing.
And just embrace who you are, because I feel like when people embrace who they are, their strengths, then that's when they are sort of the best person that they can be.
Agreed.
So,
and this movie talks about that too.
Does.
It comes back to that. Ralph, throughout the entire movie, it isn't just like you see his insecurities throughout the entire movie. So your heart's breaking with this guy.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire time. And you see Vanellope's insecurities too coming out physically through her. She starts to glitch whenever she starts to get anxious and she starts to get nervous and stuff.
Which I think like that is the best representation of someone, like a visual representation of someone like being stressed and nervous. Because like I feel like when we get that way, like I'm like that, I start to just like glitch basically. I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of feel lost and I'm like, wait a second. What's happening? Like I totally just like lose it.
Yeah.
My sense of like everything. So yeah, I think the movie does a really good job of visually representing a lot of stuff, emotions and sort of things that you feel and how you perceive things. The new characters that are in this movie, Gal Gadot's in this movie, Taraji P. Henson. I thought everyone did an extremely good job.
Oh yeah.
Again, that's the thing that impressed me about this movie. There is no villain, and there's no moment where these characters like one of them goes bad.
No,
to just like take the plot in a different direction. I love that. I love that Gal Gadot's character was just a good character.
Yeah, and that Ralph was wary of her because his own insecurities were saying, this person's infringing on my friendship.
Yes.
This person is a villain in my story because they can take away my friend.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the movie just does a really great job of showing people that it's okay to look at yourself and to address the things that you think maybe aren't perfect about you, and maybe addressing your insecurities and saying like, how can I be better? How can I make myself feel better? How can I just love myself a little bit more? And that change is okay, that things can change and everything will work out at the end. And like the friendship is the most important thing and love is the most important thing. And I think that was universally the thing I love the most about this movie that I did not expect.
And I will say, thinking about that really quick on this, because I feel like we can talk about other things in the film as well, but this is just such a big, it's the plot.
It's the movie.
It's so interesting. So Wreck-It Ralph 1, plot of Wreck-It Ralph 1, basically Ralph, it feels like nobody appreciates him. He's a bad guy and nobody treats him equally. They say, you can't come to our parties because you're the bad guy of the game. He even goes to like the bad guy, like AA basically, and they all talk and whatnot and say like, I am bad, but that is good. Just because I'm bad doesn't mean I can be good. And whatnot. So at the end of this film, Vanellope's like the only really close friend he's made. You see that at the beginning of the film. He's only hanging out with her. He's only spending time with her. She's to him, that's the only person who cares about him. Even when he's reading the comment section, he pulls out this little "You're my hero" necklace and he says, this is the only person whose opinions matter to me. And I think it's so interesting because he is so wrapped up in just the approval and the love and the attention from one person that at the end of the film, it's like, yeah, even though their friendships are, even though they're apart, she's in Slaughterhouse Race, he's at the arcade. To me, what was so great is when he's telling her and catching her up on things that have happened in the arcade, that he says, oh yeah, we've started this thing where everybody gets together and has like a little dinner party and every other video.
Tonight.
And I'm hosting tonight. Yeah. And it's him branching out and realizing that it's not just one person who he puts so much on her to be there for him. And I think too, a lesson he learns in the movie too is like, you know what? My life is going really good. And I am loved and embraced by so many other people around me. And I think that's a really important message. That was just another thing that I was thinking about too, is that it completely like makes sense from the end of the last one and leads in from the end of the last one. Because there was a line in the film where he says, I was in a game where like up until a little while ago, everybody hated me. So for that, so he was incredibly insecure in the first one. That insecurity has not left him because he's not dealt with it. And now he's starting to make the change.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, I agree. What are other elements of the movie that you really enjoyed?
What I really enjoyed. Okay, Disney princesses.
Oh yeah, we got to touch on that.
Oh, the Disney princesses.
That was so great.
I was one of those people that literally was shook the day Ralph broke my internet. And when the Disney princess trailer dropped. I think it's so fun. They really highlight each of their personalities so well. A lot of the returning voice actresses are there, namely from the Renaissance on. Of course, we have new voice actors for Cinderella, Snow White, and Aurora. Cinderella, of course, being voiced by Jennifer Hale, who's been the Cinderella voice actor for the past several years. Also, Commander Shepard, also Rosalind Lutece in Bioshock Infinite, also the new Overwatch character Ash. So she's killing it. I love Jennifer Hale. But yeah, they encapsulated each of their characters so well. And then there's a part at the end where they all use their abilities because they're all amazing female characters who do stuff in their own movies, I agree, but in this one they all work together to save Ralph. Yeah. And it's so good. It's Jacques and Gus are in the movie and they even do like their voice lines from Cinderella, and I'm sitting there as a Cinderella like diehard like favorite Disney princess. I was like, I'm shook. Like, they're really, and even I think I tweeted about this when the first trailer came out. In Cinderella's relaxed wear, she's wearing her hair like she does throughout most of the movie when she's working it for her stepmother and stepsisters, which is she's like a little low ponytail in the back with a bow, and it's those minutia details. They're so darn good.
I love that part. I thought that was such like the way that they save him and how he's wearing Snow White's dress and all that.
He's on a mattress and Naeem, and you haven't seen Princess and the Frog. So, but Prince Naeem is the frog that Tiana's holding, and he does his signature smile from the movie. Oh.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And again, I was worried going into it, like, I don't want this to be a big, like, Disney self-referential kind of, like, I won't say the word that I was gonna say, but just a big Disney referential movie. But again, there's cameos by C-3PO.
Oh my gosh,
by
Grumpy.
Iron Man.
A113 is referenced.
What else is in there?
Big
X-Wings and TIE Fighters. Like
X-Wings and TIE Fighters.
They reference all
Peter Pan, Shadow, and Grumpy.
That's right.
And then Eeyore.
That's right. Eeyore.
There's so many like really quick Disney, and like I love it because like Grumpy and Peter Pan, Shadow, and Tinkerbell are like eating snacks at Crafts and Services backstage. I love that.
Yeah, and I like anytime those characters show up, it's done very quickly. Stormtroopers were like a little like
they were the added forces. Yeah.
Bert's excited. Hey man, it's probably like the best appearance of Star Wars characters. No, it was done like very, very, very well. It doesn't like linger in the movie for an extended amount of time. It's like you get in, you get out. You like hit all the marks, and then the princesses come in at the end. They save the day, and it's just so fun.
Yeah,
and it's cool to see. It's like Princess Avengers almost.
Speaking of princesses, this is something they did not tease at all in the trailers, and I'm so thankful they didn't. So basically, they see in order to get into their relaxed wear, they see Vanellope's outfit, which is a hoodie and a skirt and like tights, and Cinderella's like, I want that. Let's hook, because she makes her own clothes, and she's like, I have mice and birds that make my own clothes. Yes, they do. In her movie, they make her the pink dress. So, and I love how they use that, not the fairy godmother. Just thinking about that now, that's all like done by like they craft their own outfits. Love it. So they make this relaxed wear, and they're just sitting and talking, and then Ariel starts doing an "I Want" song because she just wants to wear more comfortable clothing more often, and it starts going into there, and Vanellope's like, what's that? And all these princesses are like, oh my gosh, you've never sung an I Want song, and like the world melts for you. And there's this whole thing where they do make fun of this too, is that, oh yeah, you just find an important piece of water, an important body of water, and you look into it and you start singing, and you just sit there and you're looking at all these characters, and it's like, yep, Cinderella sang into soap bubbles.
All the same.
They all sing into different bodies of water.
Yeah.
And then later in the film, Vanellope sings a Disney Princess I Want song written by Alan Menken that even has the trademark like doo-doo-doo at the end. And it's, oh my gosh, I was losing it in the theater.
Yeah, because it's one of those things you're like, is this going to work? And then they go into it and I'm like, this is
And Gal Gadot singing.
Gal Gadot is singing, yeah. It's hilarious. It's really, really fun. Overall, I was just impressed that they were able to balance all these things while not shifting the focus from Vanellope and Ralph's story. Because I think it would have been very easy to be like, oh, we're diverging into a Disney movie. Oh, no.
I think the way they did it, though, was really great. Because she's like, I want a steering wheel. They're like, and she tries to sing a song about a steering wheel, and it doesn't work. And then she starts singing about what she really wants is to be in Slaughterhouse Race. And then that launches the story even more, because then she realizes, man, this is the thing in my heart that I want, and now I have to tell my best friend.
And I think, again, those moments are not there just to be there. They're character moments.
Yeah.
And they build onto the characters and the evolution of the characters. And I think it was important to have those moments and to do it in a creative way like that. That's like fun and self-referential and all that sort of stuff, but isn't like really cringe. I thought was done so incredibly well.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you have another part of the movie, or because I have something that I would like to see more of?
Oh, okay, go.
Or do you not have any?
No, I think those were like the most impactful moments for
me.
Like there's a lot of other stuff. Like there's like the Tron reference in the beginning.
Gosh,
on the
Tron
light cycles. Like I absolutely love that part.
Rest in pieces, Tron.
I know.
You got a virus and you broke.
Yeah. And I just love how they incorporated all this modern stuff into this movie. But at the end of the day, it's about the relationship of these two characters. It doesn't take anything away. It adds to the story. There's great humor, great moments. Where they go to the search engine, voiced by Alan Tudyk.
Oh my gosh, the man of a million voices.
I'll tell you what, so well done.
Because he sounds exactly like I forget what character he sounds like basically one of the original voice actors. I'm killing myself as a Disney fan because I can't remember this gentleman's name. Guy who voiced Pooh, the guy who voiced Tigger.
Jim Cummings.
In the original one.
Oh, okay.
And the guy, I think, same guy who voiced also the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. But Jim Cummings as well, doing this kind of very nasally little voice that you hear from like those voice actors. So that was so great. I love you.
Yeah. All right, what's your moment? Or what things that you would like to see more of?
Okay. Being a Wreck-It Ralph fan, being a huge fan of the first one, coming into this one, who am I going to see? How are they going to incorporate? Because Wreck-It Ralph, the original one, takes place in the arcade. I love Fix-It Felix. I love Calhoun. They're two amazing characters that we got developed in this first one. We hardly get to see them in this one. I totally understand why. I think the runtime was perfect. I think the story is about Ralph and Vanellope. I totally get it. I would not have it change for the world in that sense. Like, keep it on them. Don't take away any time from their story. I guess I wish they could have been incorporated into their story a little bit more.
Sure.
I don't know. I just really love those characters. And just as a selfish thing, I just wanted to see more of them.
And I think there's an opportunity, if they end up doing a third movie, I think there's an opportunity where you can sort of bridge the worlds together.
Yeah.
And maybe create some sort of a scenario where you have more characters from the arcade go into the internet with Vanellope and some of the other characters to, like, have some sort of, like, uniting story.
I'm curious to see what a third one would be.
Yeah. And if those characters already exist in the internet, because they're technically, like, they would be in the internet. Oh. So it's like, as a deal with, like, two characters coexisting in the same universe.
I mean, we don't really see two Ralphs.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Other than, like, the
virus Ralphs.
Yeah. So I'm curious of, like, how those worlds work. Is the arcade world, does anything in the arcade world, does that not exist on the internet? Or do they overlap? Like, how does that,
Also, gotta love how a arcade developed character was able to generate so much income that he was then able to pay for something, but not as a real person. I can't think about that too hard enough, or else my head's gonna explode.
Yep. Yeah.
But is there any? I guess there's anything maybe that you disliked from the film, but I think you could have been like, oh, I could have seen more of this, or I could have seen less of this.
I mean, I think there were maybe a little bit of elements, especially like talking about the whole idea of what the comment section is. I think there are little moments like that we could have expanded upon just a little bit more. I would have liked to have gotten to know Gal Gadot's character maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, she was a little bit more of a device.
Yeah, but again, it's like you're at that point. I'm kind of afraid of, like, well, we're gonna diverge from the point of the story, and these other characters were kind of brought in to help support Ralph and Vanellope. So other than, like, those little things, overall, like, I didn't really have too many issues with this movie. And maybe my opinion will change because we've seen it once and we just got out of the theater a couple hours ago.
Feeling good.
Yeah, so maybe after I see it a second time and I think about it for a few more days and be like, oh, maybe this could have been done a little bit better. Maybe I would have liked doing this instead of doing that. But just on my first watch, walking out of the theater, I'm very happy with this movie. I had a really fun time, and I was very just surprised and thankful that they touch on some of the things that they touch on. And it was overall a really good time.
Yeah, I have to say, too, like, I feel like with the movie, I know a lot of people were worried about this movie a little bit because they're like, oh, gosh, the internet references, because, of course, the most recent movie we've had doing this, kind of doing pop culture, app, social media references was, of course, Sony Picture Animation's The Emoji Movie. Where jumping from app to app is a big plot point that a lot of people didn't like. So I think everyone there, I know there were some people hesitant, being like, oh gosh, is it going to be like that? Is it going to be similar? I think we talked about it a little earlier, but we can go in a little bit more detail right here. They do such a great job of that just being the setting. It's not like going to all these places. Oh, it's a pivotal deal. Yeah. Here's all the jokes. Yeah. Here's all the because we're in BuzzTube, which is like BuzzFeed and YouTube.
Yeah.
And we see Amazon, we see Google, we see these other places, and we see, I loved Instagram is like Instagram is an art gallery, and
Twitter,
same with Pinterest.
Yeah, that's right. And Twitter is just literally just like
birds in a tree.
Birds and trees.
It's so simple.
Every time they chirp, a tweet comes out.
And it's not like every character is being like, aha, yes, this. It's just they appear in there, and there's the visual representation of it that is then funny. It isn't like people on the internet are weird. Here's them doing stuff.
Yeah, and we spend the most time at eBay, and even that's not like a big part of the movie.
Gosh, the auctions of eBay is so well done.
It just represents like a real, like, it's done in a way, like you're saying. We don't spend too much time on it. We don't worry about it too much. It's not a pivotal thing. You just sort of like see the buildings and all that sort of stuff, and then like the focus is on eBay for a part of it because that's kind of like the pivotal part of the story. And then we kind of move on from it, and you see other things, but it doesn't spend time just talking about those things or referencing those things or going to those locations. It's very quick. It just sort of lets you know that, like, the internet is full of these things because it totally, like, it is. That's our internet. That's real. So I'm glad that it didn't just
oversaturate
with that sort of stuff.
And I will say really quick, I love the character of Yes, with a bunch of different S's, like it's Yes with a lot of S's, is the algorithm for Buzz Video or BuzzTube. And something I noticed too is that when she says at the beginning, the internet's always changing, you're trending for one moment, you're not. Every scene she comes into, she's wearing a completely different outfit.
Yep.
In that she's a physical representation of the algorithm that she is based off of. I love that stuff.
Another cool character who I thought was going to be out of the movie for the rest of the movie and then shows up at the end. I'm like, oh,
I thought
great.
she was going to be the villain.
I did too. I thought it was going to go to Incredibles 2 route where it's going to be a twist and she's going to be the villain. I'm like, oh, man,
she's been making all of Ralph's videos popular for like a mean reason or something.
Her own.
So glad there was not a villain in this movie.
Yeah.
It's so great because you just have all these characters who are also showing Ralph, hey, we're all trying to help you. Like we're all here for you.
Exactly.
It's not just Vanellope. Exactly. So good.
Any final thoughts or any other things you want to bring up?
I'm just curious now that you're talking about 3. I have no idea what they would do for 3.
Yeah. I'm okay with not having a 3 if they can't crack a story.
I'm totally fine with not having 3. Unless it's like Ralph goes to like a console, or I can see the plot of 3 basically being the arcade closing and kind of approaching that.
Going into the
internet, or just going into like a console, or maybe, oh my gosh, now I know what it is or something. Maybe he goes to like Comic-Con or something, or the arcade closes but they bring him to a museum or something, or it's Toy Story 2-ish where it's like, oh, we're going to keep you in like a case or something because you're a collectible. There has to be something in there with like retro gaming and modern gaming. We touch a little bit on it in both movies, but not like...
Yeah.
Is there a really crazy collector who wants this remaining Fix-It Felix machine or something, or what? I can see it going in those routes. Maybe Ralph does Twitch.
Oh God, we'll see.
But I love this film.
Yeah.
I'm so my heart is so warm today, in a really, really amazing way because of the story and because of the message of this film and just how much heart and just great performances by both John C. Reilly and Sarah Silverman to sell those emotions and to sell those moments. It's not just the animation. It's also the writers who wrote this amazing story. Also, yes, the animators who animated these characters so beautifully. Yeah. And it's also the voice actors who are delivering these lines with so much heart and just care and love.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Guys, check out Wreck-It Ralph. It comes out in theaters.
Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Wreck-It Ralph 2. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Coming out in theaters next Friday. Let us know in the comments what you thought about this movie. If you want to keep it non-spoiler or spoiler, that's up to you. Just be wary that if you go into those comments, there will probably be some spoiler discussions happening. So just forewarning you now. In the meantime, guys, make sure you subscribe to Hyper RPG here on YouTube, youtube.com/hyperrpg. Check out everything that we're doing on Twitch, all the gaming, all the Wreck-It Ralphs happening on twitch.tv/hyperrpg. Emily, where can everybody find you on the interwebs?
Well, you can find me on the internet. Ralph's not breaking it anymore. You can find me on Twitter at frankly_Emily. You can find me on Instagram at frankly_Emily_. And you can find me on HyperRPG pretty regularly.
Yeah. You can find me on Hyper every single Thursday night at 9:30 doing Hyper Heroes on the interwebs at Adam Havoc. Very simple, just my name. And nice. Give HyperRPG a follow on Twitter, hyper_RPG. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, obviously here on YouTube. And let us know what you thought about this movie because it's pretty great. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next review.
Bye!